ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited. Super special guest today. I am so stoked to be able to have the opportunity to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, the truth, the author, the entrepreneur, the co-host of a podcast, Mr. Isaiah Jackson. How are you today, man?
Man, doing awesome, man. Glad to be on the show. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man. I know I have been reading your book, Bitcoin in Black America. I'm not done with it yet, but it is powerful stuff, man. And I know today I wanted to have the opportunity to reach out to you to talk about a lot of topics. But one of the first ones I wanted to bring up to you today was have an open discussion with you about racism here in America, across the world, and just have this conversation. And I think it would be very interesting to have this conversation, being a white man and an African American man, and so that we can do this together. And I want other people to see that we can have open conversations about these things and learn from each other, so that we can progress forward and help the Black community and serve the Black community. So my first question for you today is, what are some of your biases, whether that comes to meeting new people, whatever happens in the world? What are some of your biases?
Well, I wouldn't say I have many, but I'm sort of biased towards the type of people who like to live freely. I'm not really, whenever I meet people out, I'm not really a big fan of people who just listen to what people tells them. As you can see, most Bitcoiners are like that, so I get along pretty well there. And as far as racially, if we're talking about biases,
Yeah.
not much. I would say as far as a complete bias, but some of the things that I've seen towards myself biases that Black people don't know what to do with money. So I have seen that bias in the space.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I don't really have any sort of racial bias towards anybody else. I think everybody can achieve what they want, no matter the color. And going forward, if Bitcoin is going to be a better money system than what we have to get rid of those biases, and we have to start off fresh. We're only 10 years in, and if we're already becoming more diverse, we're already better than the system we have. So that's what I
Right.
would say as far as biases.
I think for me, I grew up in Atlanta, and I grew up in the suburbs. It was very white, very kind of upper middle class. And I think one of my struggles and biases that I had, that I'm still working on, is when I would meet people, one of the first questions I ask is where are you from? And boom, slapping a label on them. Oh, okay, you're from the west side of town. Okay, I already know who you are. Okay.
Mhm.
Or, oh, you're from this side of town. Oh, okay, I already know who you are. And what I've learned over the past couple of years that I'm continually working on is to not label people, and to just respect them as a human. Everybody's a human on this earth. We're all part of the same species, and we're gonna have differences, but that bias has been something that I have been truly trying to work on. And I know a lot of I'm probably not the only person that does that, and everybody has those biases, and they're not going away. It's about recognizing that, and then being able to have conversations and understanding. And I think for me, that's a bias that I've been really trying hard to work on. So,
And I will say, as far as like implicit bias that you have, a lot of it comes from outside sources. So
right.
one thing I've had to do was, well, first, I grew up around all types of people. Um, we moved around a lot, so that bias sort of went away internally. But I don't let the media or what outside people determine about other people. Even if they say the worst things about them, I like to meet people in person. So
Mm.
that sort of helps me with that bias. But I get it. You have that, you slap that label, and it's sort of easy, but that's low hanging fruit, right?
Right.
So yeah, if you can move forward and just see people as people, it's always better for you.
And like I feel like a large part of that too is about the environment, that whether you grew up in a certain environment, whether the people that you surrounded yourself with thought a certain way, so therefore that's how you think and that's how you see the world. And I think sometimes by taking a step back and coming from a place of understanding, that can help to kind of start tearing down some of those walls. Now, another question I have for you is what is your definition of racism?
Mhm. So racism, as it is in America, is a system, but around the world, racism is a system that is systemic. It allows the dominant class to rule over the non-dominant class based on their skin color. This is not just in words that you use, but in practices. So in banking practices, healthcare practices, we see forms of racism. And the reason I say the dominant society is because racism, in my opinion, can go both ways. But if you're not the dominant society, it's hard for you to enact racist practices against someone else. So as Black people in America, we are not the dominant society, so to say, or have not been the last 500 years. So racism to me is just anything done with implicit bias, like we stated before, and with racism or with colorism involved, because there are little slick ways to do it where they'll say, well, just we won't give loans to that zip code, or we won't allow voters in this area to mail in ballots. And then they just so happen to be a 90% Black area. So
Mm.
racism to me is a concerted effort, a system to try and keep yourself the dominant society. And we've seen that in America for a while now. I don't think it's going away. I just think you have to make it very costly or make it not make sense for them to be racist or to have a racist system.
How much does like power come into play in regards to racism? Is it a power struggle to maintain that dominance, so to speak?
Yes, to an extent. I think the people at the top, yes, but for most regular people, not really. Most people just want to get, live their life, do things, not trying to dominate another culture.
Right.
However, we have seen that based on colonialism, based on some of the economic practices, and being racist is not relegated to one group. You can be racist from you to someone else. However, racism is a system built. So if I say something bad about an Asian person, I don't have a system in place to keep Asians out of my business. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
so racism itself is a ongoing system, but being racist is something you can do any day,
Yeah.
anybody.
I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch the 13th. It's on Netflix.
Hmm. Yep.
And like one of my biggest takeaways from that movie was one of the first films ever made here in the US was Birth of a Nation. And like that like blew my mind about how racist that whole movie was. And that impacts, think about everything we're doing today. We watch videos on social media, we watch movies, and kind of that shapes our thinking and how we see the world. And that to me was like, holy shit. Like
Yeah.
that shaped generations of people's thinking that, oh, if
Hmm.
you're Black, you're a criminal. And it's immediate association with that. And I think we got to break that circle. And it's part of my duty as a white man to be able to stand up and say, that is not okay. This is what we have to do. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. Now, I want to touch on serving the Black community as a white man. What is something that white people can do to serve for the cause of equality?
I think, and this may be surprising, but just be yourself, and I guess don't be a dick. It's it's sort of it's one of those things where it's like I know white people who are my friends, who are allies. A lot of times most Black people just want to be left alone, because if we're just left alone to our own devices, we're fine, we can figure it out. And I think some of the implicit, or maybe not implicit but explicit racism that we see is a very small number. But it's small things that white people who are trying to help can do. I know some people have these little microaggressions. I'm not really big on it, but small stuff.
Mm,
Touching people's hair, saying you speak nice or you speak well. Things like that. I feel like people are like, kind of turned off by that from white
right.
people. So little things like that, you kind of watch it. But I'm of the opinion, be yourself. There's
Yeah.
no reason for you to change your entire life to try and help community. We can help ourselves, and we've done it before. We just need to be left alone, and that's the problem. And when you see racist things happen, calling it out. But yes, at the same time, most Black people just want to be left alone.
I got you. I got you. All right. Now, when it comes to the thought, I guess, of white supremacy, kind of circling back to that dominant idea that you spoke on, how do we start to deconstruct that, especially here in America?
Oh yeah. So in my opinion, it starts with the money, because white supremacy is a farce without the money system being run by mostly white people. When you take that system away and it's open and free to everyone, then when you have a diverse money system, you don't have a dominant society, or a dominant group, I should say, Federal Reserve, private bankers that are 98% white. That way, you don't have what's called white supremacy today, because if things change, let's say, for instance, Bitcoin is great, becomes the world reserve currency. It's used in China, used in Africa, there won't be white supremacy at that point. There will be, the supremacy will be whoever has the most assets, who can run things efficiently. So I think in order to tear that down, we do have to start with the money system, and then everything else branches out from there.
Yeah.
Because this system was built by white men for white men, and has served you. So you do want to try and change that.
I was able to watch another conference you did with, I think Clev was the host of that, with like Sinclair Skinner, and something that they mentioned was how VCs are kind of allocating their resources towards white people, especially, and limiting women's exposure to funding, and the Black community especially. Is that a good place to start? Is I guess my question.
Oh yeah, definitely. In my opinion, you have to start the conversation somewhere, and I thank you for that. And going forward, I kind of want to change from going from like people of color and women of color, all of that. But you have to start somewhere, and then once the inclusion comes, we don't really have to discuss it as much in the Bitcoin industry. So yeah, I'm glad Cleve had that event, and I think that is needed, definitely.
What would equality for the Black community look like in America from your perspective?
I think the equal opportunity. Everybody's not going to be equal, so to say, as far as how much money you have, how tall you are, how much cars. That's never going to be completely equal, but the opportunity has to be equal. And whenever that's taken away arbitrarily off of just somebody just wrote something in the law that you can't actually pass, I think equality of opportunities how we get there, and then time. From an economic standpoint, most people in this country have a 400-year deficit to overcome, based on so many practices over years. So it does take time, even if we have the equality of opportunity. It does take a little minute for people to increase their visibility in sectors they may not have been before. We're starting to see that in tech, starting to see that with business owners, and in any sector, healthcare, where Black people can be involved. That will happen with the equality of opportunity. Once you have the opportunity, you get the education for it, we're all good from there. So it'll take some time, but I just think you got to at least give everybody the same opportunity.
Right.
That. So once we can get to that point, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, and to touch on your point, where there's been this disparity, so to speak, for hundreds of years, where the biases have played out through these systems, through those people that are controlling and if the Black community were to receive reparations for these injustices, really, what do you think that would look like, and where should we start with that?
Oh yeah, so I do agree that reparations are owed. I do not think they will happen, and the reason being is because we just saw them print $7 trillion, while simultaneously telling us for years they don't have the money to have reparations. That's a clear sign they just don't want to do it. And they just don't want it to be something that, and for politicians, they don't want to have to go back to their district and be like, yeah, you just gave a bunch of Black people money. What about us? You're supposed to care about everybody, which I understand that as a politician, you got to play the game. You're supposed to work for everybody. So in my opinion, the best way to take your reparations, or to get the wealth back that was taken from you, is to invest in something like Bitcoin and use it so that the people who have the fiat currency that made you poor, they pour it into the asset that you already own, and you essentially give yourself reparations. Because I'm about doing for self. I'm not really big on asking for anything, even though it may be owed. If it's owed to you, then take it back, and you have to do that. You have to have a system, or at least a good practice in place for that to happen. And I think that's how reparations will probably come about, through Bitcoin, blockchain technology, through future advances and innovation in tech, being able to use that so that the money that was used to oppress us is now used to fund what we're doing in the future. And you just give yourself back the money just doing that. Because if you look at who's investing in Bitcoin, a lot of big name or big whales have it, but there's a lot of mainstream regular investors who have small amounts, which will become, I believe, more valuable in the future. So
awesome.
Give yourself reparation.
What irony that would be, with the government printing all this fiat money, and we're able to turn that into equality using Bitcoin. And I think that's like the perfect irony in the whole situation.
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, what is one experience regarding racism or prejudice that you endured, and what did you learn from that situation?
Just in general, man, I've got a couple, but I remember somebody, yeah, in third grade, somebody spray painted nigger on the
Mm,
wall, and it's only three black people in the school,
mm,
and we all had the same class at the same time. It just happened to be there at the same time. So of course somebody was being racist. And one of the things is I went to a private school, so I was in third grade, but it was K through 12, and there was a 12th grader that was black who saw it, and I just remember asking him, I was like, "Are you not affected by this? Does it matter?" And he's like, "I got a full ride to Vanderbilt, football scholarship. I'm a 4.0 student, and I'm graduating top of the class." That word doesn't really mean anything to me. So that kind of
mm,
changed how I thought about it at the age of 7, because even though people can say what they want, it's up to me to either respond to it or to do something about it. And once I saw that, and I was like, well, I'll just be better than you. To me, racists are, counterproductive at that point. I mean, and
right.
especially if I provide value. In the Bitcoin space, I haven't seen it as explicitly, but there is a personality out there called Bitcoin Ben. Some people may like him. Have seen a video of him using nigger with the hard ER a few times. It's whatever. And
Wow.
yeah, and it's available for anybody to see. Also, there's a lot of immature crypto people, teenagers who live in like Europe or other countries who don't have experience with black people. They have never met one. One guy from Poland, he's like, I didn't meet a black person until I was 25 years old, so I didn't think it was anything wrong. I heard it in rap music, but that's sort of what I've experienced. Nothing major because I don't really let anything affect me. But as long as it doesn't get physical, I don't care what you say. Just don't touch me, or just don't try and stop me from doing what I'm doing within the system. Which is why I'm so adamant about going about Federal Reserve, because they're as racist as it gets. So
Right.
yeah, regular people, I'm just like, whatever, man. You just express yourself, trying to get a rise out of people. It's whatever. But yeah, those are a couple experiences. Just
Well,
a couple.
yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I just really feel sorry for people that are doing these kind of things, because
Yeah,
it's like the time that you're taking to bring down another person. Why don't you take that time to make yourself better and
exactly.
do something good in the world? And it really is a shame, because I just think there is a certain population of people that will never change, and
Oh
that
yeah.
and they are just stupid, and that you can't change stupid. And it's a shame, but it's unfortunately how the world works. And like you said, it is hopefully a very small percentage of people, but I think
Mm,
if the large majority of the world can start to open their eyes and start to understand that these microaggressions or things like this are offensive, that we need
mm.
to start changing those things. So thank you. I
Oh
appreciate you
yeah.
sharing that, man.
Yeah, that's very low vibrational energy to me to be
Yeah,
racist. Wasting time,
right.
man.
Exactly, man. We got bigger shit to do in this world
Way
than
bigger
put
shit to
each
be
other
doing.
down.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So we're going to shift over to kind of the more personal slash blockchain questions here. And obviously, having sat down and written a book and getting just diving in headfirst to this industry, where does your conviction to want to change the world like you are doing come from?
I believe it's a couple of things. It started with Bitcoin itself. Um, Bitcoin, learning about it, when you start learning about history and monetary policy and how much we were lied to and how inflation affects us, at a certain point, you get fed up. And I'm sure most Bitcoiners have gotten to that point where they went down the rabbit hole and they started realizing, damn, everything is fake. This is shit. And it's not just in money, everything. You're like, the media, I've been doing a show for 3 years and I've seen the media flip flop 1,000 times. So that is one of the reasons I was so adamant about, look, we have to do something about this, because that's why Bitcoin was built. And that's why blockchain technology exists, is to change what we already have, not to co-opt, what we're already doing before. So that is the first biggest reason why I did it. The second reason was I was so adamant to speak to my community, is because as far as freedom goes, as far as, freeing yourself, we should be on the front lines. We should be the most excited about something like Bitcoin, because we tried everything else. We've had a black president, we got black politicians, we got rich black people all over the place. We have real estate, we have graduates build businesses. We've done all of that. Didn't work. So I was so adamant, because I was like, we have to have some sort of other solution. And I believe Bitcoin and blockchain technology can be that solution. So those two reasons made me want to write this book, as well as you may or may not know, the second book, which is coming this year.
Ooh, okay, a little teaser.
Yep. Yeah, a little
I'll
teaser for everybody.
I will definitely be a customer, man. I'm about halfway through this book, and I just real quick side comment is like your education background comes through in
Oh
this book
yeah.
because you can
Yeah.
tell it's just well thought out to where it's so easy to just crush through pages and understand it too. And I think that's what a lot of the industry right now is missing is all this complex jargon that the creators of this whole thing made. It created
Mhm.
a lot of barriers for people because they just read it and they're like, what the fuck does this mean?
Yeah, and they
So
check out instantly. Yeah,
right,
I mean, I always describe it as when you ask somebody their Wi-Fi, they just give you the password, right?
right,
Now, if you say explain Wi-Fi, and I start going into layer 2 protocols and local area network, they'll be like, "What the? Okay, I
right.
don't even want Wi-Fi, even though it is useful." So that's what I'm seeing in the blockchain and Bitcoin space. I'm like, look, take it down a notch. Most people want to know how they can use it. That's it. They don't want to know about the Bitcoin improvement plans. They don't want to hear about the stock to flow ratio that much. You know what I mean? Like, just keep it to where people can learn it, taking the information, and then you can scale up from there, which is how book 2 will be. Just a step up from how the first one was.
Yeah. And that's a good point because like if you think about like the internet, like nobody knew when it first came out like what an IP address was or a
Exactly.
URL. And it's like now everyone's like, oh yeah, URL, like, and they type it in. So
Mhm.
it's like it's the same concept. You got to make it stupid simple for everyone to kind of understand and digest. And then once
Mhm.
it keeps going and going, more people will start to understand the specifics. So I
True.
appreciate your insight there.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to improving the blockchain industry regarding equality, I know we touched on this earlier with the VCs. Is there any specifics that you would like to see to bring more equality to the space?
Yes. So one thing I've noticed with conferences, I've been to, I don't know how many conferences I've been to. Usually, I'm one of the only Black people there, one of the only minorities. Definitely no women there.
Mm.
So you don't have to change what you're doing, what you're talking about, who you're speaking to. You have to change who you market to. And there are plenty of Black financial groups. There are plenty of other other races and groups who have their own financial groups who practice group economics. You have to market towards them because when you market towards what you consider mainstream, mainstream is always 70, 80% white. So even if you feel like you're doing the right thing, you're always going to get the same crowd. So I would say having more of a marketing towards the Black community, towards other communities, I should say. Also increasing diversity. I don't want to ever tell a founder to just hire somebody based on their race or color. You have to have the best people for the job, right? So it starts, in my opinion, at the lower levels so that the education, high school, college students that can learn the skills needed to prosper in this world, you need to, as a business owner or as somebody who owns a corporation, a blockchain group, you need to focus on them, teach them so that in the next 10 years, that 12-year-old, 15-year-old kid who learned about blockchain from your company will now be going to the conferences and building their own businesses. And you won't have to have this sort of, balance act where people are like, well, I got to have 50% white, 50%, or 20% black, this, and people are jumping through hoops to try and do that. You have to have the right people. And if the right people, if they happen to be mostly one color, that's how it is. But if it's spread to everybody, as blockchain companies can do, then you start to get all types of people from all walks of
Yeah.
life. So that's how I think we can increase diversity. Focus on the kids because we can't solve it right now, but in 5 to 10 years, definitely.
Yeah, and to that point, like I think it's one thing to say, okay, our company is diverse, but
Hmm.
it's about providing the opportunities that people have not had access to, whether that's
Exactly.
internships, whether that's after school programs, things
Hmm.
like that, to help that education, to give those opportunities to people who haven't been afforded that opportunity. So
Absolutely.
a very, very important point there. And I appreciate you sharing. So now what is the future of cryptocurrency look like in your eyes? Is this going to turn into no more fiat cash? Is fiat cash going to turn into a digital currency? What are your thoughts about all that?
Oh yeah, so you said it. Yeah, fiat currency is going to turn digital. The dollar's value is down 99%. It almost costs more than a dollar to produce a dollar. So
Wow.
at a certain point, you won't have digital dollar. I've already started to see cashless places out here in California. Started to see businesses who just don't have any coins because of Federal Reserve shortage. So I know pretty much for a fact fiat currency is going digital. Cryptocurrency, though, to me is is something that, for one, it's really early for everything outside of Bitcoin. So just getting started. And I believe you have to have some sort of speculation when you start in order to find a price range. So I think we'll see speculation for the next 2 or 3 years with most cryptocurrencies, and then the best projects will go on to be sort of the Teslas and Microsofts of today. So in my opinion, where I see it going is at some point Bitcoin will be a reserve asset for a major country. In my opinion, once the U.S. stops, getting away with printing money, and then the cryptocurrencies that have a use case, either for privacy, for DeFi, for smart contracts, whatever, they'll rise to the top as well, because they'll show the value of being able to send and receive money or tokens in a timely manner for a cheaper price. You can't take away that value proposition. So I think they'll still be around. Just won't be, 5,000 cryptocurrencies that work. Most are garbage, just being honest. So the ones that have a real use case will last, in my opinion.
So, like, do you think there's ever a day where the IMF is no longer using the U.S. dollar and it could shift to another country or a Bitcoin?
Yes, I think we see China actively getting close.
Right.
But, I'm not sure. I don't know what holds in the future, because a lot of their plans have already been planned. And a lot of what they do is 20, 50, 100 years in advance. So in my opinion, if Bitcoin is a part of that strategy, it's already baked into whatever plan they have. But you're right. As soon as the US dollar is not the standard, the US will very quickly devolve into something else. And we've never lived in a time like that, so we don't know what it's like. But if you've ever talked to people who have fled other countries, or have parents who have fled other countries because the money got debased, everything went to shit as soon as that happened. So if the International Monetary Fund decides to do that, I would be surprised, but I would kind of see it coming, because we are going digital. Yeah.
Yeah. No, if you could describe Bitcoin to us in one word, what would you use?
Oh man.
I know it's a tough one. It's tough to describe it all in one word, but
in one word, let's just go with exciting. It
okay.
really is. It doesn't matter even if you're getting liquidated on BitMEX, it's still exciting.
There's always something happening.
It's always something happening. Yes, it's always exciting. So always some news, always something. I mean, we just had TikTokers pump Dogecoin 20%.
I saw that today.
How amazing is that? It's just sort of funny to see it from scratch, because we'll have these stories for our grandkids one day. But Bitcoin is definitely exciting. Never a dull moment. That's why I do the show every day. That's why I'm in this industry.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Now we are going to roll into our fire round. These are the fun questions to kind of get to know you a little bit better. The first question I always like to ask all our guests is, what person, place, thing, or idea has had the biggest impact on you?
Probably Nipsey Hussle, who I dedicated the book to. The reason he's had such a big impact, I was introduced to his music back in 2009. Was going through a lot with college. Music really impacted me. Then I saw his business moves, about how he started from nothing, much like I did. You have a single parent home background, low income. You start out there, but you don't give in as soon as the money comes. He could have signed with major labels and took an advance, but he wouldn't have owned it. Ownership is one thing I really, really learned from him. He paid for everything out of pocket. Same thing I do now. I pay for my own book tour, pay for the book, and everything I've done business-wise. Really impacted by him. And then also to giving back, being able to go back to the community that you came from and then pull other people up with you. I've been able to do that in my hometown of Charlotte. So Nipsey Hussle is probably the biggest impact that's had on my professional career.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you obviously have listened to Nipsey Hussle. Is he your favorite musical artist, or is there a couple other musical artists that you listen to as well?
Oh, yeah. He's one of them, but my favorite, if I had to go all time, it's probably Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
Yeah, and if not him, probably Stevie Wonder.
Okay. All
Listen
right.
to them any day, anytime.
Yeah. Right on, man. Now our next question is, what is your favorite city that you have visited or want to visit, and why?
PG County in Maryland, right outside of DC. It's about 90% Black. It's also one of the richest counties in Maryland. It's great to see what I think a lot of Americans think doesn't exist, which is middle class to upper class Black Americans just living their life, having fun, working, having kids, and there isn't some high crime rate or some poverty stricken area. So that's one of my favorite places to visit. Great comedy clubs, great food, great people. I love DC.
Right on, man. Now, what has been your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that?
My biggest failure was, oh man, there's been a few. Probably starting my first web design business when I was
Mm.
22. I was working as a teacher, and I was transitioning into IT, and I tried to start a web design business, which, I was pretty good at web design, web development, wasn't bad, but sort of failed there with the business side. Learned a lot from it, and realized it's much more to business than just being good at what you do. A lot of good stuff.
Awesome, man. Now, what is your definition of greatness? What does that mean to you?
Resilience, no matter what, because coming from wherever you're from doesn't matter. As long as you are able to be resilient and get over the hump and do what you have to do to make a great life for yourself, that to me is greatness. That to me is when you can call someone great.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with me and provide insights and educate me about a few things. Where can people find more information about you, get in touch with you, listen to your podcasts, all the above?
Oh yeah, so daily we have the Gentleman of Crypto at 10 a.m. Pacific on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at BitcoinZay, and you can also visit the website bitcoinandblackamerica.com. So visit there, hit me up on Twitter. I love to talk to people on there, and of course do podcasts so that I can meet pretty much everybody in the crypto space. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely link with me there, and we'll talk more.
Awesome. Isaiah Jackson, I appreciate you coming on today's show. It has been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely will want to do it or bring you on the show on our show as well. So perfect. I love it.
Wow, what an absolute humblance to be able to speak with Isaiah Jackson. The guy is an absolute legend. He's a revolutionary. Like I said, the guy's the truth, man. If you want to talk to an absolutely just wholesome, down to earth dude, Isaiah Jackson's your guy. He's changing the world in front of our eyes. He has been a big part of this Bitcoin revolution across the world, and especially here in America. And I really appreciate him taking time out of his day. I think the biggest takeaway from me was being able to talk to someone with an open heart and open mind, just to get understanding and perspective. It may not be the same perspective as yours. It may not be the same experience as yours, but you can still learn something by just listening and having an open conversation. It may be uncomfortable at times, but guess what? Change and growth comes from being uncomfortable. So start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's where we as people can start to change the world. And I'm excited to see a lot of what Isaiah is doing. And if you haven't, go like and subscribe his channels. He's on YouTube, like he said. He's on Twitter. If you have not already, check us out. We're on Instagram and Twitter, CryptoLiveLeak. If you like, subscribe on YouTube. Do that as well. And your boy Benton Yaun's all over the place. I'm posting dumb shit, but it's all good. Hopefully I give you guys a laugh and teach you guys something. I think at the end of the day, that's what I'm here for, is I want to help educate and bring this complexity to the world. And you know what? I'm going to do it my way. And I hope you guys had fun today chatting with Isaiah. You learned something. You took something away from that conversation. And until next time, over and out.